Let's go ahead and take a phone call from Chuck in Oklahoma. Chuck, you're on the air.
Alex, how's it going, man? I sure appreciate what you're doing for us all.
I appreciate you. I'm very excited that I'm starting to see some sanity. The government's now saying too much fluoride in water. They don't tell you also in food and toothpaste. And Google violates laws, the police are saying, all over the world. So we're starting to see a little positive movement here. Go ahead.
You know, I think it's about time we start seeing a little positive movement. And I just don't even know how it even came to this. I mean, the idea of it all putting fluoride into our water, I mean, they try to say, oh, it's helped to keep our teeth white or whatever. I mean, I thought that's why we had dental insurance. I thought that's why we went and paid, you know, our $20 copays to get our teeth white.
Well, the government doesn't care about corn syrup and things that they know are really bad. They don't care about our safety. It's all about the excuse to force things into our body, and now they admit that. They're saying, oh, we want to put statins in the drugs for kids. We want to put statins in the water and lithium in the water. I mean, we can see what they're doing.
Yeah. I think it's just absolutely crazy. I don't even know how it's even come to this. I mean, I think it's a really ballsy move just by the government and everybody that's trying to...
well, here's another chutzpah-filled move. Came out this week. EPA leaked documents. They knew this pesticide was wiping bees out, and they said, go ahead and use it, but don't tell anybody. They know they're killing the earth, but then they give us fake ways to help the earth so they get more power.
I mean, we've got birds falling out of the sky. We've got green algae falling on people in China. I mean, what are they exactly trying to do? I mean, do they not think that
they've now had thousands of doves die with green dripping out of their beaks in Italy?
Yeah. I mean, and what kind of, you know, gets me thinking a little bit is, you know, you see how they can actually control you know, volcanoes erupting and stuff like that. You know, a lot of these things that happen, you know, with killing a lot of wildlife that I notice is around volcanoes when a lot of these, you know, poisonous gases and fumes fumigate from whatever these volcanoes, and a lot of wildlife starts dying off. I mean, well,
there is a big fault line where all these birds are dying, and over by Arkansas and that area where 4 states come together, but there's no active volcanoes or off-gassing going on, and they now are trying to officially say that fireworks made 5,000 birds fly into each other and liquefy their insides, which is completely impossible and insane.
Yeah. That is completely insane. I think the last thing a bird would do as soon as they see fireworks would probably go the opposite way.
Well, I mean, if birds ran into each other, I've seen birds fly in to glass windows on houses. They're not pulverized inside, break their neck. I've shot hundreds of birds with a shotgun and eaten them. And let me tell you, in fact, I got emails about this. Folks that haven't dove or quail hunted don't know this. You can butcher them in about 10 seconds. The only meat that's good on them, maybe with bigger quail, their legs, but all you do is just reach in and rip the breast right off, pull the feathers off in about another 10 seconds, and have a plastic baggie with the marinade sauce that you're going to baste it in. You throw it into the bag while you're out hunting for a few hours. When you get back to the house, it's ready to cook. But I'll assure you, folks, I've shot birds with shotguns. They're not pulverized. The BBs shoot little clean holes through them, and there's almost no blood. Maybe their lungs will pump a little bit of blood up, and there'll be a little drop of blood coming out their beak. That's it. I've shot hundreds and hundreds of birds. My dad's probably shot thousands. I mean, anybody who's been bird hunting knows this. It is ridiculous. I appreciate your call. Good to hear from you, Chuck. Let's take a phone call off our new phone line system and test it out. Let's talk to RJ in Texas. RJ, you're on the air.
Alex, what's up, buddy?
Good. Good to hear from you.
Good. How you doing? Real quick, anyway, I just moved here to Austin, and I don't really want to put any more money in the banksters' hands. I was wondering if you could recommend a good local bank.
Could I recommend what specifically?
A good local bank. Small bank, you know, not in control of the banksters.
Sorry, I was distracted. They were fixing some equipment in here and had the door open, and I couldn't hear you. I'd have to research local banks myself in your area, RJ. You know, I don't really like to give people financial advice because even if it looks like good advice today, you know, the bank might go under tomorrow, even if it's got some great local rating. But you can pull up, type in Texas, you know, top Texas rated banks, and you'll see which ones have the biggest reserves, which ones are rated having the best customer service, and I would look at a wide range. I personally think, old local credit unions are great, things like that. But, I mean, I specifically, RJ, don't like to give people, individual advice.
And I was just trying my luck. Anyway, can I get a plug for my site?
Sure, go ahead.
WanderingGlassStudio.com.
All right, RJ, good to hear from you. Let's talk to Josh in Ohio. Josh, you're on the air.
Hey, Alex. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, actually, I just wanted to kind of touch base with you and let you know here in Ohio, I've been speaking with people for about the last 10 years. And, when I first started out, everybody just laughed at me left and right. And, lately, I talk to a lot of people at my job, and even interact with different aspects of the government and police and whatnot. And I'll tell you, a lot of people are really starting to wake up, and they're starting to notice. So,
well, that's one of my biggest frustrations is that I know people are waking up en masse because I'm well known, and I go out on the street, and so I can get kind of my own poll in different parts of the country and world on what number of people are awake and involved. And, I mean, it's got to be 20% of people in Austin I walk by now come up to me. I mean, or more sometimes. I mean, I can almost not even get through the day and function sometimes. So many people. I'll be walking my dog or walking with my kids around the neighborhood. Cars are stopping. Other parts of the country, 10% probably stop. Other parts of the world now, 10% come over. I mean, it's getting really ridiculous. And imagine how many other people are awake but just leave me alone. Or know about the New World Order, but don't know who I am. I mean, it's incredible. And my frustration is, though, people who aren't prominent, who aren't on TV and radio and doing all these interviews and things like I am, or who aren't in films, including some Hollywood films I've been in, or the really Austin films, but major film releases, they don't have that interaction. That's why we sell the T-shirts. It's all symbiotic. It funds the operation, but it's also wearing your colors, getting out of the fear. I mean, and if you don't want to wear an Alex Jones, Infowars.com shirt, go buy a Ron Paul shirt or a Campaign for Liberty. I mean, you will be mobbed. You will have folks, if you're a drinker, buy you drinks. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I talk to people all the time who wear Infowars.com shirts, and, men have women coming up to them. Women have men coming up to them. They're meeting people. At church, folks are coming over. People get dinner bought for them, drinks bought for them. I mean, we need to have this community, and it doesn't mean that we're all even on the same page, except that we want more liberty and know we're going in the wrong direction. I mean, it is crazy, Josh, how awake people are getting.
It's really exciting, and I think you really hit it on the head there when you said that we just need to interact more, and people need to stop being so afraid to express their opinions and just come together more. And like you said, if we disagree, then we can agree to disagree. So it's exciting, I think.
Absolutely. Folks, you can experience what I experience, at least to some level. People will still be more timid if you're wearing a T-shirt because they don't know who you are. People feel like they really know me because they spend, I guess you do. I mean, you spend more time with me if you're a regular listener than I probably spend with my wife and children a lot of days. And so you do know me. And so people come up as if they know me because they do. But you'll have, I'd say, 30% of what I get. Again, that's a dead reckoning, 20, 30, I don't know, maybe more, if you're wearing a bold Infowars.com shirt. I mean, I want you to experience this, folks. In fact, we should probably put out a Ron Paul 2012 T-shirt and promote it, draft Ron Paul 2012, so folks can get that going. In fact, I'm going to announce it now. I'm going to have it designed today. It'll be up by tomorrow. In a few weeks, they'll be in. We're going to put out a draft Ron Paul 2012 shirt. And that's another good thing. Wear your colors, wear them loud, wear them proud, folks. That's how we take the Republic back, is identifying ourselves as being on the team for liberty. Let's continue with your phone calls. Let's take a call off of the Genesis phone lines. Then we'll go back to the first-time callers that called 877-789-ALEX, the new number we're testing out today. Let's go ahead and talk to Chuck in Oklahoma. You're on the air. Thanks for holding, Chuck. Oh, we already talked to Chuck. That's right. Jonathan in Kansas. Go ahead.
Yes, Alex. There's three big stories I have for you, and one of them is on YouTube now. It was off it was a clip taken off of Anderson Cooper's show, and it's called 5,200 Pentagon Employees Purchase Child Pornography. And it's big, and Anderson Cooper was saying that nobody was getting charged, nobody was was going to get in trouble about it. And you can type in 5,200 Pentagon employees, just that.
Well, I remember that came out, I mean, that comes out all the time. I have to tell you, I'm very suspicious of all of that. Because trillions have been stolen from the Pentagon. So there's a process now of trying to blackmail lower-level people, and they're also killing quite a few people, as folks have been noticing, to cover up the trillions and trillions and trillions that are missing that make Madoff look like a choir boy. And I'm not doubting that that's going on. I would just like to see Anderson Cooper cover DynCorp and Halliburton when it was even in the Chicago Tribune running giant kidnapping rings. I mean, they don't seem to ever get into the hardcore bona fide stuff. You know, they'll just claim that something's going on and then nothing's being done, and then that's held over the Pentagon personnel's head, and then they can claim, oh, this was on your network. It was also in the news yesterday that the government is telling all federal employees to spy on each other, to make sure that everyone's loyal and that people aren't giving stuff to WikiLeaks. So they're just using this as a secret police system. So as above, so below, as the ancients would say. It's just as governments become more criminal, they start spying on everybody. And it's not good for anyone but the tiny, tiny elite at the top. So I will check out that Anderson Cooper video. What's the other news?
That there's a new mass grave that was found in Austria a few days ago. And you can just type into Google News, Austrian mass grave, and that's the first thing that comes up. And the last thing I have to say is that China released its new pictures of its new stealth fighter, and it looks nearly identical to F-22 Raptor. So I'm thinking that Lockheed Martin might have sold some of the technology.
They absolutely, Laurel Hughes in the mid-'90s with Clinton, and that's why the Republicans wouldn't go after Clinton for anything truly substantive. They had to go after him for sex because that was compartmentalized to only Clinton. See, politicians can't ever persecute each other or go on witch hunts against each other for political gain on any real issue because they're all involved in it, or the leadership is. They're all got their hands dirty. So Ken Starr and others were linked to the Chinese sellout, and then that little ruse where the surveillance, AWAC, got forced down in China when Bush first got in office, and then the crew didn't punch the button that wipes the computers, and they also have an acid bath other system they're supposed to activate. They didn't do it, though it takes 1 second. That was another cover-up to deliver all of that stuff to them. I have seen the reports. I have seen the new Chinese fighter, and it's a complete knockoff. Now, there's somebody else who may have sold it. You know who the #1 culprit of selling U.S. secrets to China predominantly, but also to the Saudi Arabians and Russians? You know who's been caught over and over again giving all our secrets to other countries, and that's Israel. And you can just...
Yeah.
I mean, you can just type in Israel transfers technology to U.S. technology to China. I mean, it's constant. It's all crooked as a barrel of snakes. Any other articles? You always call them with good stuff, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say Yuri Bezmenov revealed that Ford actually built...
Stay there. The government now admitting that fluoride is really hurting people. This is just incredible. But that's because we force their hand. The vast majority of government scientists are on record. And they always say the same thing. I didn't believe it till I looked at it. It's deadly. I can't believe they did this. So incredible. That's coming up. Jonathan in Kansas, you were finishing up a point with news items that you were raising for us.
Yes, well, I wanted to say that Yuri Bezmenov in the 80s revealed that Ford actually built trucks and actual factories for military trucks in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that was Arm & Hammer and others. Look, Ford, General Motors, right through World War II, were making money off the German machine. That was in congressional hearings. Our Ford trucks, Chevy trucks, paid for with U.S. tax money, were built in Russia. They got money through their Opel division at GM and through the Ford division in Russia. I forget the name. We were fighting our own equipment the entire time in Vietnam. It's called full spectrum dominance, and the Rand Corporation and others have explained this. To fully dominate, you've got to fill every space. And so they believe in full spectrum dominance. Full spectrum dominance doesn't just mean land, air, sea, controlling your mind. It means creating and financing the Muslim extremist, creating and financing the Nazis, creating and financing communism. This is why they're so hard to beat, because they will create a false political hologram with unlimited central banking funding. They have unlimited money because we accept it out of fraud. It's a magician's trick, but once you buy into it, that's why they're so hard to beat. Once you're aware of it, though, but, I mean, I'm not familiar with the guy you mentioned. That stuff's all in congressional hearings. That all came out with Anthony Sutton's research. I mean, that is all very well documented.
Yeah, and, well, I also wanted to tell you that this UFC fighter got a visit by the Secret Service because he criticized Obama. He said, well, he didn't agree with the socialized health care. He said that someone had to knock some sense into him. It's just a common saying, knock some sense into him.
Yeah, in fact, guys, pull up. If I've got the article, I saw it 3-4 days ago. Pull up the UFC fighter. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be something like, UFC fighter wants to fight Obama. And the guy clearly said, I'd like to face him in the ring. Well, I mean, if Obama wanted to go join UFC, they're always talking about what a great basketball player he is and how he could play in the NBA. And then Barkley came out and said that the guy was a joke and he'd completely game him. Even though, quote, I'm a fat man, as Barkley said. I mean, are they going to get a Secret Service visit there? This is a sport. They wear gloves, and that's the end of it. And statistically, they've had time to look at it now over the last 2 decades, the sport developing. It's less dangerous than boxing, because with boxing, you got high-powered men, but they're wearing gloves. And so it goes on a lot longer, and it's the concussion that damages the brainstem. In UFC, you don't last very long, so it's much less harmful than NFL. See, the pads, overall, in the end, hurt you worse, because they extend unnaturally how long you can be in these high punishment zones, but you're still getting the concussions. Whereas UFC, yeah, you may not have as long a life in the sport, and your ears may look like cauliflowers, but your brain isn't going to be as dingy. And again, I've looked deeply into that because it's very interesting. I've also had a lot of head trauma myself, not from fighting professionally, but car wrecks and having people hit me upside the head with a pole axe and stuff like that. Listen, I appreciate your call. That's a really good point. Yeah, I did see that. That's in the stack to get to. Obviously, he meant, I'd like to fight him in the ring. And you don't do that in America. Now, it'd be one thing if Obama was some 70-year-old president, but Obama likes to run around like he's, some kind of sports icon. So get in the ring. Come on, we'll be right back. If you just joined us, a caller, Jonathan in Kansas, brought up Jacob Volkman, who said about Obama, somebody needs to knock some sense into that idiot. That's what the media went with that headline. They said, why do you want to fight him in the ring? And he said, well, I'd like to knock some sense into him in the ring. But they took it out of context and did send the Secret Service after him. And I heard this a few days ago, but didn't cover it on air because we had more important issues to cover. But the overall message is they know full well this guy isn't planning anything violent. They just wanted to go there and intimidate him to send the message that you little people sit down and shut up and you don't talk about the puppet in chief. They also protect the president so vehemently to project the image that the president actually runs something. So the president can be politically blamed in the end and then replaced with new birdcage liner for the New World Order. Let's go ahead and play that short clip.
All right, so now you got a big win over a veteran. Who do you want next?
It doesn't matter. Guida. I don't know. Obama. Like
Wow, you're calling out Barack Obama right now. That's pretty big. That's ballsy.
he's not too bright. He made a lot of like the making home affordable plan and then his health care plan. Someone's got to knock some sense into that idiot.
All right.
Wow.
And so there you go. Say that in America. Obviously, it was a joke. The guy's laughing while he's saying it. And no, you don't do that. You don't do that. Just ridiculous. Let's go now to the first-time caller line. Tracy in Indiana, then Keith, Janet, Tom, Nick, and others. Go ahead.
Hello, Alex. Good day to you.
Good day to you.
Yeah, listen, first-time caller, just helping test out this new line you got. I'm a single father. I get my son every weekend. Made the mistake of renting the road last weekend. Boy, you talk about leaving a hole in your heart watching that movie.
Well, that's really what happens when societies break down. Within 15 days, the majority of people become cannibals without food, and that's the type of world we could be entering if we're so immoral. If 7 million people died by starvation-related illnesses during the 10 years of the Great Depression, we were 90% self-sufficient and agrarian. Now we're right at 90% urban and not self-sufficient. Less than 10% are self-sufficient, because it's estimated by university studies only half of rural people, which is 10% of the population, is self-sufficient. So that's 5% total if half of the 10% are self-sufficient. So it is a very powerful film. I only watched it once, and I've had it there on the shelf, you know, where I like to jog every morning. On the treadmill, I like to watch a movie so I can suspend disbelief and forget that I'm jogging. And I just don't want to watch it again. It's that disturbing, especially when you have children. But go ahead.
Yeah. Another good movie is The Book of Eli with Morgan Freeman. I just watched that one also. I don't know if you've seen that one. It again, is about...
No, I think that's not Morgan Freeman. That's Denzel Washington.
Was it Denzel? Okay, my mistake, yeah. One other question. Have you ever educated yourself on Uniform Commercial Code 1-207? Has anybody ever...
I'm a little familiar with the Uniform Commercial Code, which supposedly codifies into code law, but it really doesn't. More and more they make law with it. It's fraudulent and color of law. But no, fill me in on that.
Well, the 1-207 is the first book, 207th paragraph. It is the remedy or recourse to all the other Uniform Commercial Codes that are wrote after it. And if you a timely assertion of use and common knowledge of that code, then you can the courts have to hold you in a common law court. Basically, what you're doing is reserving your right not to compel to perform.
Yeah, I know folks have written that code on, you know, tickets and things under duress, and I think it's had, you know, some mixed response. Not that it isn't valid what you're saying, but most of the judges don't even know the law, much less the police. I mean, they know a lot more compared to the general public, but compared to somebody who's actually studied it, you know, they don't know very much. But I mean, what success have you had with that, or did you just read about somebody saying?
I have had success with local utility companies. I have had success with my local court. It does, when it gets to the judge. Yes, it does work. Unfortunately, I've had to use it.
I've seen that and read that many times, and I always just get it all scrambled in my brain, and then have never tested it myself. What's that code again?
It's the Uniform Commercial Code 1-207, and with a timely, sufficient, explicit entry of the use and common knowledge.
Isn't that 1-208 now?
It's 207.7 is what I was educated about 15 years ago. I've known this for 15 years.
I believe that's why I didn't recognize what you were saying. It's 1-208.
And then maybe
308?
103.3 is what construes with common law, where you hold yourself to a common law where you need corpus delicti.
I'm going to have to look that up because my memory doesn't serve during a break. Because my memory, 308. I'm going to have to look that up. I appreciate your call. Good to hear from you. Let's go ahead and talk to Keith in Florida. Keith, you're on the air.
Hey, Alex. I want to tell you it's an honor to be able to call in and talk to you. I've been listening. I was awakened by a friend of mine, and it was the best thing I ever did, and I got to let you know that. The reason why I wanted to call in today as a first-time caller was because of the vaccines. To tell you, I listened to some of your strategies that you say that you should use, and we got our kids where they can't get vaccinated, and they go to private school, and I was talking to the lady that owns the school, and what she did was she read the information that I gave her. She used to be a registered nurse. She actually had a seminar with other nurses that are going through nursing programs to tell them that they should not recommend that kids or their kids or people get vaccinated because of what it's doing to our bodies.
Well, that's right. And just like they're having to cave in now on fluoride and admit it's hurting people, that's Associated Press today, they're going to cave in on this. It's not that they couldn't produce a vaccine that would actually help you get immunity, and then if you had something really deadly out there like polio or smallpox and it was killing a bunch of people, you'd want to go out and take it. It's that they're eugenicists who've been caught in the official UN and Rockefeller documents that we've published and showed again yesterday on air at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, that they're adding things to it, cancer viruses, sterilants, White House science czar calling for putting stuff in the water. I mean, you can't trust them. Plus, they give liability protection. So it's not just that there's a eugenics angle. Then there's a liability protection since the 70s where they use taxpayer money to secretly, in the Vaccine Damage Fund, pay people off if they can jump through 100 hoops and prove they were damaged. And then third, the trifecta. You know now that the vast majority of vaccines are manufactured in communist China. And so you've got this sworn enemy, they're eugenicists, you've got all their history of melamine and the milk and everything else and lead in the toys, and now they're making our drugs. And they're making a lot of the preservative additives that are then added to our foods. I mean, we've got to have a boycott China movement. We have got, and I know it's almost impossible. Almost everything's made in China. It is the death of us. They have rivers routinely just lighting on fire now. They're so toxic. I mean, it is. So they set laws where we can't have industry here. Then they move it all to China where they have no laws. They pass the laws to shut us down. Anything else?
Yes, I wanted to let you know that one thing that I do when I'm out, it doesn't matter if I'm at the office supply store, if I'm at the repair center, I start talking. And then I give them your website, and I'm like, you all know something doesn't feel right about this country. Complete strangers. And then I give them your website, and I had a manager of the store to call me up and thank me for telling him about Infowars.com because he said that I knew that it was something, and he was like, this guy hit the nail on the head. So I just want to tell you that you give me the courage to go out because you get up every day. You said you're the tip of the spear, and I tell you, I'm one of the feathers in that arrow because I tell you, I'm going out and I'm telling as many people as I can, and the awakening as a result of you, and then you follow up every day that builds the credibility. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for what you do to try to get the word out and save this republic, okay?
God bless you. God bless you, Keith. Folks, did you hear his voice? Did you hear his spirit? That was the spirit of victory, the spirit of truth. Could you feel it in my gut, in my soul? I was in a connection with Keith 800 miles away from where I said. Oh, I just got chills right there because he has discovered the secret. Keith, we are all the tip of the spear and the shaft of the arrow and the feathers and the eye that guides it and the arm and the shoulders and the hands that pull the bow. We are all in this symbiotically. At a gut level, the survival instinct of humanity is strong, and people subconsciously, intellectually, spiritually, in their discernment know things are wrong, and it's so unusual to see somebody in a hardware store not just talk about the weather or sports, but to do what humans are really supposed to do. You know, things are wrong in this country. We're Americans. We're free human beings. Other folks are, whether they're Germans or Chinese or whatever they are, they know things are wrong. Mexico, it doesn't matter. We know the truth when we hear it and see it. We feel it. And we intellectually can see the facts of it, the proofs of it. And so when you resonate, and the reason you're so effective is because you're not like timid. Hey, you think things are kind of weird a little? I know you don't want to see it, but here's a video. They're going to laugh at you. At least some will. Those that are tuned in will say, thank you very much. Oh, great. But if you need to just resonate with confidence in the truth, and you're there to warn people. I'm here with some important information. Here's a film. Here's a documentary. Here's a website. Here's a business card with a website on it. Start your own locally. Start your own newsletter in the neighborhood. And have that spirit of just telling the truth and reaching out to people. It is so exciting. And it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable. If you turn your power loose, there is nothing the globalists can do under heaven and earth to stop us. The only thing that could stop us is God, and we're on God's side. And the globalists hate that. People that say we've got God on our side and who really do. Who are standing up for what's fundamentally right, fundamentally wholesome, fundamentally decent in every culture. People have a conscience. They know what we're designed to do. They know what's right and wrong. Anytime I do something wrong, half the time by forgetting or not paying attention, being vulgar or being worldly or lusting or whatever, I catch myself and I just go, man. Because I know, not because I was told that when I was a kid, I know inside it doesn't feel good. Deep down. It feels good on the surface, but not deep down. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I'm going to get into the fluoride, then our next guest, and we'll take a bunch of your calls. I promise. Well, here is the super good news. Of course, it's a deception. It's a whitewash, but it is a devastating blow against these people. There have been, no exaggeration, hundreds of major studies directly linking the massive increase of autism or brain damage to vaccines and the adjuvants that accelerate the autoimmune response in small children. It's been proven in just so many studies. We've had brain surgeons on, like Dr. Blaylock and others, that it causes brain swelling. And we saw the increase in sudden, infant death syndrome, vaccines, the shaken baby, you shook your baby. Then they've done studies correlating it to within the first 6 to 12 hours after the shots. Because the hospital isn't going to admit they did it to your kid, or the clinic. They're just going to take your kid after they juice them up and your body has an autoimmune response. And it hits the pancreas and other things as well. But they try to deny all that. And then they'll put out a CNN report, this doctor's been discredited. And then we have the doctor on who did the studies, and they just say he's discredited. Kind of like Gary Webb in the Dark Alliance Pulitzer Prize winner. They told him that his evidence wasn't true. They had no proof. They got the San Jose Mercury News, globalist owned and run, to throw him under the bus. And then he was writing a book double proving it all, double tough, with all the new evidence that had come out. The CIA had since admitted it, and he got shot twice in the head, and the police said it was suicide. And if you'll buy that, I'll throw the Golden Gate Bridge in free, as George Strait would say. So they've got a history of this. And when you look at fluoride, it's so naked, brazen, out in the open, just in your face, that it makes your head spin. And again, we've had so many medical doctors on about this, and endocrinologists. We've got the incredible Dr. Conant interview up on prisonplanet.tv, hour-long, going through all the documents on this. And there he was, a big top chemist, and laughed at his wife and went to disprove what she was saying, and from the literature, and found out it was worse than she even thought. We're going to get him on, by the way. He's on vacation right now, but we'll have him on in the next few weeks to cover this big development. Well, I'll get Dr. Blaylock on about this as well. But this is out of MSNBC. They've reposted an AP article. Too much fluoride in water, government says, and I'll direct prisonplanet.tv viewers to the fact that it's up on screen. And look, it's an AP exclusive. U.S. says too much fluoride. An exclusive. The moon is not made of cheese. Unexclusive. Grass is green. Unexclusive. Chihuahuas bark. Unexclusive. Bill Clinton lies. Unexclusive. Al Gore's a scam artist. I mean, come on. Unexclusive. This is very exclusive information you're about to get. No one... I remember 2 years ago, exclusive Associated Press, government secretly taking baby's blood at birth. But they said for the last 5 years, it's 39. We have all the documents and have published them over a decade ago. I'm not tooting my horn. That's what's frustrating. I've got the UN head IPCC here openly saying they want a total police state and to kill you on prisonplanet.com with links to the papers. Okay? If I get the documents that confirm they're taking your baby's blood at birth for a secret bioweapons lab, it's real. All right, I'm sorry. I should be positive, and I am happy, but it also makes me mad. This could all end very quickly. We wouldn't be in a utopia, but the world would get a lot better if if people would get out of denial and start researching. It's all right there. I've likened it to the police pulling a car over and they smell something and there's blood on the seat and they open the trunk, there's 5 dead bodies. And then they find videotapes of the driver has in his bag of him chopping the women up. I mean, it's open and shut, okay? I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. DynCorp, 4 miles from where I sit, has been all over the news for a decade kidnapping kids. None of them get in trouble. Instead, I get death threats every time I talk about it. Because it's a big building. It's guys in suits. So the police are scared. Here it is. Too much fluoride in water, government says. High levels causing spots on teeth. Recommended limit to be lowered. So they know we've been exposing them, and they know everybody's getting these horrible teeth now, and that's admitted caused by it. So they're like, okay, just cut back. Just cut back what's in the water, when they know full well that's nothing. It's the topical massive levels that dwarf it in the toothpaste, and then they're adding it to the food and using it as a pesticide that bioaccumulates. We are going to be having, of course, our once-a-week visit with Bob Chapman coming up. In the next hour, we'll have open phones throughout that entire interview for Janet, Chuck, Julio, Tom, Jacob, JB, and others that are patiently holding. I will get to you. But finishing up with this huge announcement. Now, this is about 5.5, almost 6 years old now, that the American Dental Association covered their hind end and put out a quiet advisory to dentists that people under 6 should not brush their teeth with fluoride toothpaste. Now, kindergartens nationwide, the local dental associations, they give them the fluoride pills that are a lot more powerful. All the fluoride, they promote the fluoride at the kids, and it causes weakening of the teeth internally, the bones, and dental fluorosis, the yellow, ugly spots that you see most kids have now. I mean, most kids I see have it. Gone are the pearly whites. Because it calcifies out in the bones and teeth and brain. Now, so much medical evidence has come out. And over 90% of the EPA and FDA scientists over and over again write letters and go to Congress and say, what are you doing? This is increasing cancer massively. It's 100% proven. What are you doing? And their answer is, okay, 1.2 parts per million or 0.7 parts per million. That's too much. We think we're going to lower it down. You can read the whole AP article, but you still need it for your teeth. Well, the studies show even 0.5 going to do similar things, not quite as bad. But then you look at how much is in toothpaste. It's off the chart compared to the water. The problem is the water, it's so cumulative. Where do a lot of drugs get absorbed? Some of the best places to absorb drugs, if it's not going to be injected, and if you want to get it past the stomach that blocks out a lot of toxic things in the intestines, you take it in the mouth, under the tongue, in the saliva glands, and all the blood vessels in the mouth. That's why they say on the back of the toothpaste, if you swallow a pea size or more, call poison control immediately. I mean, that's what rat poison is made out of, many of the major brands. So, and if you want to see that, just search rat poison fluoride, click images, and you'll see all the box covers with fluoride as the poison. So, fluoride in drinking water, credited with dramatically cutting cavities and tooth decay, may now be too much of a good thing. Oh, it's now too much. It wasn't before, so there's no liability. It just may be now. It's causing spots on some kids' teeth. As reported, increase in the spotting problem is one reason. The federal government will announce Friday it plans to lower the recommended limit in fluoride in water supplies, the first such change in nearly 50 years. I'm going to finish this later when Bob Chapman's on with us, but it's total spin because they know they can make it a non-issue, and I believe they may finally just completely remove it from water entirely. You know why? Because it's now put in thousands of foods, almost everything that's processed. It's now sprayed on crops and goes through the cell wall and bioaccumulates. We've had the chemist on, and we've had the experts on plants on with doctorates in studying farming. and it is in the toothpaste, so they don't care. They realize it's reached a tipping point. People are suing and rampaging nationwide against their city councils when they laugh. See, now the city council guy laughs at you, the mayor laughs, people don't put their tail between their legs and feel stupid and leave. They get mad and start suing. And the big secret is they're putting hundreds of other chemicals in under the name of fluoride, and if we keep pushing, it's over for them. But you're going to have to get it out of the food next and the toothpaste, okay? Huge victory. Charlotte, I wanted to get to that victory and get your take on it. Charlotte Iserbyt, for those that don't know, was the head of policy at the Department of Education under Ronald Reagan, and she discovered that it was an absolute plan to dumb kids down and teach them how to only regurgitate information. Suddenly, I've seen a lot of mainstream articles admitting all of this and how we're last behind the industrialized world now in all of this. But she got all the documents out, put it in her book, Deliberate Dumbing Down. The website's deliberatedumbingdown.com. It's now out of print, but she's graciously put an free e-version up there on the site. And, of course, she also worked with the U.S. Department of Education before that, worked in the Foreign Service, Japan, Guam during the Korean War. Her dad and grandfather, of course, were Skull and Bones. And we really appreciate her joining us. The reason she's almost for the next 20 minutes is she was on about a week and a half ago, and the show ended right as she was getting into how conservatives are controlled. And she brought up the CNP, which I haven't done a lot of research on. People have asked about it, so I've done some, that reportedly the Hunt brothers helped set up and things. And she was saying that that's not a real organization, or that isn't a conservative group trying to take America back or fight the New World Order, as they claimed, but actually is the New World Order and her experiences with them. So I wanted to get her up. Charlotte, great having you back with us.
Thank you, Alex. And we don't have much time today, so really it's probably just as well because, I'm going to try. It's better when I don't have a lot of time than I just have to do bullets, huh? But the basic, this is terrible to have to tell people this, but we are merging right now with the Soviet Union. I know, people don't accept that because they had to have the phony fall of the Soviet Union so that all of you, and your listeners are smart, but so the rest of the world would really think that communism was dead. And communism is not dead at all. It's more alive than it ever was before the phony fall. What we're looking at right now is what Rowan Gaither, the president of the Ford Foundation, told the research director for the Congressional Committee investigating the tax-exempt foundations, Norman Dodd, in 1954 at a closed, off-the-record meeting. And your listeners have heard this before, but you got to keep listening and keep telling people this, because although it sounds outlandish and off the wall, it's true. He was told by the president of the Ford Foundation that the foundations received their instructions from the White House. Of course, that was 1953 under President Eisenhower, who later, just 5 years later, during the Cold War, signed the first agreement with the Soviets in every area imaginable. So anyway, but he was told that they got their instructions, the foundations from the White House, to spend their money, which is actually your money, tax-exempt, to bring about a merger of the United States and the Soviet Union. And what you have to do is just knock Soviet Union out of your head and think in terms of what's going on with the North American Union, which they're quieter now. They're hiding away because of the good people.
And they're using the fake environmental movement as a way to collectivize and cut off resources.
Absolutely.
As a mode of control. And,
right.
and just to back you up, I mean, we can pull this up. Actually, the Carnegie Foundation, in multiple congressional hearings, their early minutes, even from the 20s, have been released, where they said this was the plan all along, and it turns out U.S. and British intelligence, and this has been partially declassified, did put the Bolsheviks into power. So it isn't just like they're merging. The whole thing was set up by the banks. But Charlotte, people really wanted to hear about this CNP thing.
Okay, so the CNP, I'm just going to briefly tell you my experience. When I was in the Department of Education, I got down there. I was just bewildered all the time by different things that kept happening. And So I finally get fired because I leaked a document which was to control the curriculum on the computer throughout the country. And I couldn't understand why Ronald Reagan was allowing that to happen. I was beginning to see that Ronald Reagan was not at all what I had thought he was.
Well, he was known in the 50s. He was known in the 50s as Red Ronnie.
Absolutely, and I personally do not believe he ever changed. And all of that, a lot of that on my website.
Well, John Wayne didn't like him in the 40s and 50s, and then later liked him because he claimed he was a conservative. But everybody knows John Wayne didn't like communists. But he admittedly was in with the communists early on.
Oh, yeah, and, well, you have to ask yourself, why, while I was in the Department of Ed, I was a liaison with the White House for really public-private partnerships, which is the merging of the public and private sector. That's the Communist Manifesto, okay? And where government and business are merged together. So anyway, they were putting that in under Reagan, and I asked at the White House, I said, what on earth are they doing this for? Isn't this corporate fascism? And I was told, I guess that the people involved, all the high-up elitist people on the task force, they just don't see it that way. So I was becoming very suspicious. Then, of course, what happens, aside from everything I saw in the Department of Ed, which is all in my book, I don't have to go through all that, people, it's a free download, okay? Then when I get out, I write a little book, Back to Basics Reform, for Skinnerian International Curriculum. And that was a brilliant little book. It's only 39 pages, and it is on my Deliberate Dumbing Down website as a free PDF.
And it's how they turn the kids into biological robots, not free-thinking creatures.
Yes, that's right. So, anyway, we're talking about CNP. All of a sudden, I thought, everybody would want this little book. Well, it was boycotted by every single major conservative organization in the country. And I thought, what on earth is wrong here? Because folks, go read that book, and you're going to see a little 39-page book that had it gone all over this country and Canada. We would not now be looking at school-to-work agenda, the Soviet system, quota system for your children, which will control their lives lifelong, what they're going to do. We wouldn't be seeing that. We wouldn't be seeing charter schools, which I'll explain to you are the vehicle to implement the Soviet system.
Now, I played a British government-funded cartoon for kids yesterday where they teach them that cities will be prison and that the government will decide what you're going to be.
Well, that's exactly what we're looking at in the charter school movement. And the charter school movement, which is being supported by the school choice charter school movement, being supported heavily by the Heritage Foundation, the Council for National Policy, etc., is actually the downfall of our country. We've got like a stool with 2 or 3 pegs. 2 of the pegs are our free political system whereby we elect officials. The other peg, the most key thing for the economy, is that we have a free economy. The charter schools are going to pull those 2 pegs right out. No elected officials, which will follow down into every area after they've taken over all the schools, and all the schools in this country are almost taken over by charter schools now. There are only 10 states fighting it, okay? Now, the other leg is the planned economy, which requires that school to work. And the school to work needs the charter schools, the individual schools, which will train your children, not educate them. Now, folks, you've got to fight charter schools.
Well, Charlotte, you're such a great lady. I mean, every time you come on, you desperately try to warn folks about the takeover, and that's important. The show ended last week, though, and I was unable to get you on the next day because you were busy. We've got you on this week, and I'll hold you over a little bit. I'm sure Bob will be fine if we need to. But I mean, I'm always trying to learn more and understand all this. If you go back 13, 14 years ago, I bought this mainline conservative propaganda that let folks have school choice. Well, they should at private schools, but not corporate funded, which is just the internationalization. They're now basically becoming the government. Wreck the old schools, federalize them, then offer the solution. Now I understand that. And also, I've interviewed people over the years and a few times heard them mention CNP.
Okay, well, Alex, let me talk about this. I'm going to give you a good example. You're down in Texas, okay?
Yes.
I realize that the CNP is just about as right as it comes. They're funded by Heritage, funded by Coors, funded by all these.
No, you're saying you ran into them. So I mean,
all right, now look, I'm going to tell you how it happened. About 15 years ago, I became I thought to myself, we've got to stop this agenda that's going in here, this merger, this whatever. And the only way we can do it, we have to get out of the UN. Because no matter how hard we fight on other issues, once we're under the North American Union, which is the same as the European Union, which Gorbachev calls the new European Soviet, once we're under, it won't make any difference if we have an amendment to outlaw abortion or gun controls or whatever. So I dreamed up this little project, to have a postcard project, millions of postcards all over the country, which have on them legislation to get out of the UN, who you call, websites, the rotten UN that has funded every UN war, controlled every UN war, or the Soviets are right up there at the UN controlling everything. That's why we lose all the bad stuff about the UN. Well, what we wanted to do is we'd all have thousands of these little postcards, which we would send with bills, Christmas cards, put up on the bulletin board at the supermarket, put under windshield wipers, get out across the country. People call supporting legislation to get out of this one organization that controls everything. Now, so what we did, we downloaded the names of all the members of the CNP. 300 of them. Samuel, my son, did it, who has American descent.
Okay, tell folks who the CNP is.
The Council for National Policy is the right-wing arm of the dialectic. It's the same as the CFR, and in fact, many of the people with the CFR funded it. All right.
Well, I've always heard the right call the CFR liberal, but I mean, it's full-spectrum liberals and conservatives in the CFR.
Oh, yes, of course, and it's full-spectrum liberals and conservatives.
So this is like the Republican version of that, I guess, to pull in conservatives and then control and influence them. Is the whole CNP bad? Because this is how I learned about the CNP. I mean, I'd seen little blurbs about it with the Hunt brothers. They sounded pretty good, trying to corner the silver market and and then get us out of the New World Order. But then I saw evidence of them involved with the Kennedy stuff and Nixon. So I learned more as the years go on how foggy all of this is. And then I get emails going, "You had Pat Buchanan on. He's CNP." It's almost like a witch hunt. Well, yeah, I have a lot of guests on. I've had a Rothschild on and skewered him on air. It doesn't mean that I call up his publisher and say I want to have him on about his book, get him on and go after him. Doesn't mean I'm for him. I was against him in the interview. But then there's also a lot of people who've been in the CNP, like a Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, and he's grown. He's learned things. I've talked to him about it. He just says it's basically ineffectual.
Oh, that's not true at all.
Okay, well then tell me because you know him.
You didn't let me finish the end of it, Alex.
Go ahead.
The most important part is Rosalind Haley from Midland, Texas, who Ron Paul knows, and we all know her as a great grande dame. She was a member of the CNP. And I had this project that I wanted to get going, and I talked to Roz, and she said, "That's great." We tried to get help. So we sent a big yellow manila envelope full of clippings about Soviet tanks and training and all in the southern United States and exchanges and everything to every member of this Council for National Policy, which is made up of top businessmen and the heads of all of the conservative groups in this country, just about, okay? And we asked for help on this project. We wanted help on this getting out of the UN project. We got one response. I'll tell you, I didn't put my name on it because that's real mud. I knew that they wouldn't do anything if they saw Iserbyt. So it was Roz Haley, the grande dame, the woman that they admired. She signed it. She sent it out. We got one response from Lou Sheldon at Traditional Values. We did not hear from anyone else. Now, if that doesn't tell your listeners, stay away from every single conservative group you know.
Stay there. We got a break. Come back and break it down for us. In just a few days, Charlotte's going to leave the country for 3 months, so I twisted her arm to get her back on, and now she's like, I need more time to cover all this. We got Bob Chapman coming up, so I'm glad you're here to discuss it with us because I'm trying to understand all these different organizations and groups. Now, let's get back to the CNP. So the break stopped you. You were saying she sent this grande dame of the group or the organization. She sends them the information, and then she gets one response back.
Yeah, we sent it to all 300 members, and Rosalind Haley from Midland, Texas, close to Ron Paul and all. You probably know. Her husband wrote the best book in the world on Lyndon Johnson, Evetts Haley. Anyway, Rosalind, who was a great American, and she died a few years ago. She and I, this was our project. And so I don't need to say any more, do I? I mean, we get one response from 300 people who tell us they're trying to save the United States. That's the goal of the CNP, to save the United States for our children, to clean up education, to take care of taxes, and what a big bunch of you-know-what.
Boy, so again, from your perspective, a brief history of the CNP, and where are they in the power structure from your research?
Well, I mean, you had Paul Weyrich, was very important. He died recently. He was the initial head of the Heritage Foundation. And then he had his Family Research Council, and then you've got Edwin Fulner, who came on as the head of the Heritage Foundation later, and then you've got all of the other conservative organizations. You've got, these are people that I've worked with and liked, so I don't even like to talk about them, but people like, Howard Phillips and James Dobson, but I have to say, and LaHaye, Beverly LaHaye and Tim LaHaye, I'll tell you.
What about Phyllis Schlafly? I mean, is she New World Order?
Phyllis Schlafly, who I know very, very well and have worked with for ages. So it's not much fun for me to talk about these people.
So, I mean, are they consciously bad?
Well, it's very hard to say. And I have to say something for Phyllis, although, unfortunately, she has really been, and I've worked with her on this, she's been on the wrong side with charter schools. She's never seemed to get it. But I have to give her credit on the Constitutional Convention. Nobody has done better work to keep us from having a Constitutional Convention than Phyllis Schlafly. Personally, don't ask me why she can be so good on that. And then support charter schools, which are going to be the vehicle which will bring this country down into the planned economy with unelected boards across the board.
No, but that's my issue is that I know the CFR's bad, and but a lot of their members are mid-level. They're brought in to be co-opted and controlled. I, from my research, do believe that, I don't know if it was founded good or got taken over, but certainly the CNP goes along with the whole neocon agenda and is bad. I just get emails saying, cover the CNP, so I've done research on it.
It was funded by Rockefeller and Scaife Mellon and all, same as Heritage. And really, wait a minute, do you think that the Rockefellers, well, they do fund everything, both sides, but they knew they had, they set up this conservative think tank, the CNP, sort of, and all the conservative organizations belong to it, plus corporate sectors.
No, I know they set up Heritage. You're saying you're sure they set it up? Wow, then it's purely bad then.
Yes. And what I want you to do, because I'm not the expert on this, but I've told you, Alex, you must interview Kelly Nelson and Shay Simonton. These are brilliant gals who are out there. Nobody ever heard of them because nobody wants anybody to hear of them.
Well, I'll tell you who talked about this briefly in an interview, and I should have gone into it in more depth because, he's his uncle was a conservative icon. He's very well known. That's Joel Skousen of Cleon Skousen family. And he agrees with you. So, and in fact, we went and interviewed him in a two-part interview on this subject and other subjects, how the neocons control the conservative movement. That video is going up on prisonplanet.tv either tomorrow or...
Well, that's terribly important, I'm glad you're doing that. But what I want people to understand, I want to reduce it to the level where people... Look...
All right, stay there. Back in 60 seconds. Back in 60 seconds. We'll have 5 more minutes ahead of Bob Chapman. Stay with us. We are back live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. We got 5 minutes left with Charlotte Iserbyt. And we've got a report coming out that gets into how the conservative movement's controlled. And we've, of course, covered that a lot in the past from the Council on Foreign Relations that is bipartisan. But also how the establishment tried to go in and control the anti-New World Order movement. And that is this full-spectrum dominance system. Nothing can stop you, as the American people, from going out and running for office yourself and sticking to the issues and not being co-opted. There's been an attempt to co-opt the Tea Party. It's been somewhat successful, but not overall. And that's why we're getting major traction, because of people like Charlotte Iserbyt over the years and Dr. Stan Monteith and countless others fighting the good fight against tyranny. You said you wanted to boil this down, Charlotte.
Well, Alex, I just want to ask your listeners there, how can they trust the Council for National Policy to do what they want them to do, which means every single conservative organization you ever heard of belongs to that group? If we send out a letter to every single president of that particular group in order to asking them to help us get out of the most important entity, which is going to take us down into a Soviet system, which is the UN, which was founded by communists. How can we trust these groups when they don't even answer our letter asking for help to
what
get
about
out of the UN?
What about the John Birch Society? They've got the big get us out of the UN movement.
They've been doing that for years, but I understand in the beginning they were infiltrated as well. What you've got to understand is that the infiltration is complete across the board. And remember, I mean, I'm not talking about CNP funding as much as others, because CNP is all the different groups. But the Heritage Foundation was funded by Richard Mellon Scaife. That's Chase Mellon Bank and Rockefeller. They gave them $900,000 to get it off the ground.
No, I knew that. I've seen the proof of that. I haven't seen the proof of the John Birch Society. I've seen people claim that.
I know. I haven't really seen it either, and if I do, I try not to believe it. But anyway,
I mean, Charlotte, here's an example. People say we're owned by ABC at Genesis. When to be on talk radio, we've rented probably over the years 15 or more different satellites. Anybody can go, rent a feed on a satellite. That's how a gardening show gets syndicated. It's not true. Or they say some guy from Saudi Arabia owns us with no proof. And so my experience is I've gotten a little more seasoned in all of this. Is that I have always just constantly hear people say, this is this is that. And so that almost puts me at a disadvantage, because then I kind of wave things off even when it is true, and then I go research and find out about things like this. So that's why I'm getting you on, because you had some actual run-ins with this, but then...
Well, I sure did.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been disappointed all the way down the line. I mean, Ronald Reagan, don't get me on that subject. People should try to go buy that book. Here's the rest of him. Go try to buy that book. It sells for $100 now. You can't get it. That's what he was like as governor. We were taken to the cleaners. Absolutely taken to the cleaners by him. But the most important thing now, folks, is the Heritage Foundation affiliates in every state that are pushing for the end of our political and economic system as we have known it through charter schools. I keep telling you this. Charter schools will set in motion getting rid of all forms of elected officials, starting with school boards.
Regional government, putting it all under federal and international, amazing.
Yes, and also the Soviet Polytech planned economy is being put in right now. This is what Reagan did. The plans were for this, and Norman Dodd knew all about it too. But it's going in right now, and you have to go after the Heritage affiliate in your state. You find out what that affiliate is, and you go up against them and their funding of money to
Bob
get
Chapman's holding.
schools.
Bob Chapman's holding, but I'm going to hold you over and let you finish and then get Bob's take on what you've said. We have some other very important news we're going to be going over. The federal government's saying the Mexican drug cartels are recruiting people domestically. Of course they are. And they're buying off the police. And once corruption reaches a certain level, we'll start falling apart like Mexico. That's all part of the globalist plan. That's in the North American Union SPP meetings that Bush and others signed in. And so you'll hear George Bush, criticizing globalism, and then he gets in as a big globalist. You'll hear... constant pushes for things. Ronald Reagan was campaigning against the Trilateral Commission and George Herbert Walker Bush, but then he caved into that. I mean, that's why we have to understand. The reason I'm getting into this now is I'm making a film dealing with puppets and politics and things like that, and a eugenics film and another film. And I've got all these interviews, all this material. I'm not even sure which one I'm going to put out. I've got to get on it, though. But more and more, we're getting ahead of, just like we told you what Obama would do from the left attack of the New World Order. Now we're getting everybody ready for the full Republican takeover. Because if we don't understand how they operate and educate people, we won't be able to hold their feet to the fire. But we're getting, for the first time, real toeholds with forcing things through here. And we can repeal the No Child Left Behind. We can repeal, which was a federal takeover. We can repeal the health care. We can get out of UNESCO. They just got rid of the Global Warming Committee yesterday. I mean, we can kick their hind ends if we believe it. And Charlotte, I wanted to bring Bob Chapman in because he was listening for 5 minutes on hold to you, covering all of this. Bob, what's your take on all these pyramid power structures, CFR with the left and right, CNP, the neocon arm of it to co-opt the conservative groups and kind of get them under control, the Royal Institute of International Affairs in England? From my research, in fact, give me a document cam shot, guys. I'm going to draw a image here for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. From my research, everything is in pyramid power structures. That's why the New World Order symbol, is a pyramid. And at the bottom of these organizations, most people think they're operating in a good cause. Like local cops think they're actually fighting terrorists. But as you go up, the need to know gets less and less compartmentalized until you hit the top of the pyramid of the CFR or any of these groups. They have them all over the world. Then you find out this pyramid nexuses in to other pyramidal power structures, and that's the management system of the world. That's why if you go out and tell Masons they're involved in occultic activities, the average Mason isn't involved in that, so then you're discredited because they're compartmentalized. Or you go and explain to a good Catholic person who's anti-abortion, great American, that the Catholic Church is promoting world government now at the top. Not Catholic bashing, it's that it is. Or that major Protestant groups are promoting it. Or through these big denominations that, again, top-down control. Or you talk about Israel being corrupt. People then, the media spins it, oh, you just don't like Jews. No, there's corruption all over the world. The media says, you're criticizing China and its corruption. You must not like Asians. That happened under Clinton when he was selling us out. So, again, it plays into the system. From what I've researched is things like the CFR, CNP, that's why the CFR has, thousands of members, is they're bringing people in to try to influence them, to try to see who they can get to work in the system. And if they don't, they get kicked out or stay low. If they say yes, they move up the power structure. But then I've seen people unfairly claim, because I don't know if she's evil or not. I know Brad Pitt's seen my films, and I'm going to leave it at that, and likes them. But to say Angelina Jolie is evil without proof, though she made some Illuminati movies, I tend to not like her and don't trust her. And I know Bono is involved with the Rockefellers. I know he's now is a front of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and is evil. It takes me time to research something before I can 100% say, the whole thing is rotten to the core. But I mean, overall, I'm just trying to give people my own view on how I analyze things and understand things. You've been in the anti-New World Order movement for close to 50 years, Bob Chapman. You've been basically driven out of the U.S. with, assassination attempts and people trying to plant hand grenades on you and all the rest of it. But I know you were there putting out Gary Allen, None Dare Call It Conspiracy, doing such yeoman work. You know a lot of these CNP people, I would imagine. What's your view on it, and what's your view of what Charlotte's saying?
Well, she's right, and it's perpetual. They don't give up. They never stop. And as you say, if someone goes along with the program after they recruit them, that's all fine and good. If not, they're shunted aside or they leave or whatever. And we went through these change agents during the 60s and 70s. They are planted. There's absolutely no question. I mean, we even had them planted in gun clubs, if you can believe that. And we were able to identify them and isolate them. Charlotte doesn't know this, but I was involved in the first gubernatorial race that Ronald Reagan was in, and I know a great deal about him for a lot of reasons. And I know a lot of things that I'll never say on radio because they get me killed. They'll start really looking for me.
And you haven't told me about this stuff, just like I told the D.C. madam off air. I said, do not tell me anything that's not on air. We're all being listened to right now. If you're not going to put it out there, Bob, in fact, I wouldn't. Well, now you've said it. You pretty much got to say it now.
This is going to be shocking. Ronald Reagan was a homosexual.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the fact that during the late 1930s and early 40s, he was making what we would call today pro-communist speeches.
Well, that's on record. I mean, they spun that he was young and woke up, later and became a conservative.
Well, it all goes, and it was part of the reason that he had as many roles as he had in the movies, because he really wasn't a very good actor. And I knew him quite well, and he was a nice enough guy. But he didn't know what I know about him, and I never told him.
So he basically just did whatever he was told.
Absolutely.
Why did the Bushes, and if those that don't know, the Hinckleys having dinner with him, the whole setup, and it takes hours to get into it, but anybody just get into George H.W. Bush, attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, just search that and spend a week reading it. I mean, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but they tried to kill Reagan. So if he was totally bad, why did they try to kill him?
Well, do you really want to do an assassination with a .22?
Well, I know he was never the same after they got him. So George Bush Sr. just wanted to go ahead and officially be president. So they gave him the cold blood, which brain damaged him more, and they kind of kept him drugged up from then on.
Well, not only that, I don't think that was the intent to kill him. I think the intention was to shoot him and scare him and have him do what they wanted him to do. After his election... Yeah,
because I've also talked to people that knew Reagan well, and they said that, yes, he was just a kind of an opportunist and stuff, but he really didn't kind of like the New World Order by the time he became president, and he didn't like George H.W. Bush. We know that was true. He criticized him over that. So, I mean, was there just a rivalry between the two? Or was... I mean, I don't want to just say Reagan was a pure devil. I don't like... what's your take, Bob Chapman?
Well... Bush wasn't physically on the scene at that time. He evolved more as a person within the Central Intelligence Agency several years after Reagan's first election. That came in the 70s. I don't know what that rivalry was, because I wasn't close to the situation at that time.
You're talking about his election as governor, not as president in 19...
yes, that's right. So I was at the beginning, so to speak.
Well, I mean, now that you've said this incredibly dangerous thing, and I don't doubt you, Bob, you're not somebody I've ever heard feed people lies or baloney, and few things actually kind of give me a pang of fear, like standing at the edge of a cliff. I'm pretty freaked out right now, and not even judging Reagan if he was like that. It just freaks me out, the power of that knowledge. I mean, I do know that you are a conservative icon and did run with a lot of the big guys because you were wealthy and lived in California and were politically involved. Maybe that's why they've always been after you since. But I mean, what did you witness with Reagan? This is dangerous stuff. We might as well just get this out now.
I saw a film, and I was also told by his girlfriend before he married Nancy.
Oh, man. Man, this is making me sick right now. And by sick, it's just making me sick.
There's only a handful of people left who know this. Most of them are now deceased. There's one that is alive that I know of that knew this. And but I also got it from another source.
Now, when you worked...
earlier on.
You were with Defense Intelligence, correct? But previously in Berlin?
No. I was in Germany, but quite frankly, I was never in Berlin. And they wouldn't let me go to Berlin unless they flew me in, and there was no reason to do that.
Where did you, in what context did you see this this film?
The film I saw at a private showing, and most of the people who were there, I didn't even know. And it was by an invitation only.
Was this a group of conservatives freaked out by it, or was this people wanting to blackmail him?
No, I think it was quite a cross-section of people. And that's where I saw it. But I learned before that that was the case. And
from the girlfriend?
That's right. And I don't know whether she's still alive or not. She would probably be in her late 80s or 90s now. And probably late 80s.
Okay, well, this is obviously very dangerous right now, Bob. So was this a porno tape or just him holding hands with a guy? What was this?
No. I don't know whether I should talk about the way it happened on air. But
well, they're going to probably come kill you and maybe me if you don't, so just get it all out right now.
The film was a woman with him who used an artificial device to do what they did.
Had this been taped covertly by an intelligence agency?
It was taped covertly, but not by an intelligence agency.
Oh, so he was well, that doesn't necessarily mean he's homosexual then, but it does. But that's par for the course with these politicians. That is just unbelievable news. Unbelievable. And I actually wish I wouldn't have asked. I thought it was going to be something like drugs or something. Okay, this show's really taking a crazy turn. Charlotte, Bob, stay there. I'm pretty freaked out right now. I thought it was going to be Ronald Reagan was a communist because, I mean, I've seen a lot of mainline books say that, well, he did get into it a little bit, but he woke up to it. And that's fine. People do stuff when they're young. I mean, that's where I thought Bob Chapman would go with this. But then I was talking to Charlotte during the break, and she said, well, I don't know anything about that specifically, but I had heard those rumors. But no proof. But she said, you know, basically look at the log cabin Republican stuff. Look at Bohemian Grove. What did Richard Nixon say about it? Yeah. And I don't sit here and judge people and attack people and hate people. My issue is they can compromise you when they have that type of stuff on you. And Charlotte, we're about to go back to Bob, but anything else you want to say on the subject? I mean, you said that, when you were in the administration, you'd heard things like this, or what'd you hear?
Oh, no. I've just heard, because I talk to a lot of people, all types of people who don't have proof, people who do. And I heard that rumor floating around, and I just rejected it because basically that's not, I'm not concerned, I mean, maybe I should be, but I'm concerned about the fact that the Republican leadership of our country continues to support Ronald Reagan and to put him up on a pedestal as excuse me, I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but the Jesus Christ of I think Jesus Christ would understand what I'm saying, of the 21st century. Because this man did terrible things to bring our country down to the point where we are merging with the Soviet Union. And he knew what he was doing. I wrote him a letter about what was happening in the U.S. Department of Ed. I called it the Marxist factory. I told him everything. I know he got the letter because a journalist called him and talked to his secretary, who said, yes, he's got the letter. I never got a response to that letter. Whoa. That letter is on my Deliberate Dumbing Down website as a PDF. So I sincerely, strongly believe that is the case. I don't believe he ever changed.
Bob Chapman, I guess a Hollywood actor, Bohemian Grove. I mean, I guess it's really par for the course. But what year was this? Whenever you were shown this film?
Late 1970s, early 1980s. But when he evolved politically from we'll call it flirting with the left. George Murphy, who became a senator from California and was a vaudevillian song and dance man, an excellent actor, he sort of took Ronald Reagan under his wing and said, look, this is the way you should think, and so on and so forth. And he being Ronald Reagan, became the head of the Screen Actors Guild. And then in 1952-53, he was given a very large contract to do the GE Theater, I think it was called at that time.
Yeah, with the monkey.
Yep.
Or so understanding this, Bob Chapman.
That was a political turn for him.
So, I mean, obviously then he's been blackmailed all along. If you were taken to some elite screening, I mean, was this an elite screening? Or?
Yeah, it was elite. And, but I knew already.
Well, I mean, let me tell you something. Hold on. If somebody said, come to a screening, did they tell you what was going to be at it? Because if somebody told me, hypothetically, come to a screening of Bill Clinton, getting rough with a woman or something, which we know he likes to do, if he knocks their teeth out, I would say, no way, no way, no way. I mean, I'm all about exposing stuff right out in the open. And it's not that I'm a coward. I don't have a death wish. I want to keep operating and fighting them out in the open. This is the kind of stuff that is super dangerous. It's like I told the D.C. madam. And, I mean, were you told it was a screening of Ronald Reagan, or did they just get you there and show it to you?
They said it was important they got me there, and I was shown it.
Could it have been a fake?
I really didn't know what the content was going to be.
Could it have been a fake?
I don't think so.
Well, was it black and white?
I don't know about faking movies, but it didn't look fake to me.
Was it black and white?
Yes.
How old did he look?
I quite frankly can't remember.
But, I mean, was it the older Reagan at the time, or was it a younger Reagan?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say older.
Oh, man. Anything else, Bob, that you need to get out now so they don't send a hit team down there?
Well, quite frankly, he was a nice person to be around. He was very
Hold on. We're going to say bye to Charlotte on the other side and let her get ready to pack and go on her trip. And Bob's already gone on his trip. Maybe I should go on my trip. Oh, man. I'm going to be freaked out all weekend over this. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Oh, man. It is Friday, the 7th day of the new year, 2011. I'm Alex Jones. Bob Chapman of InternationalForecaster.com is our guest. The former head of policy, #2 position in the Ronald Reagan First Administration, Department of Education. Charlotte Iserbyt is our guest. Her father and grandfather were skull and bones. And we have got, it's got to be 10 hours of bombshell interviews with her. And almost all of it's going up on PrisonPlanet.tv. A bunch of other big interviews going up in the next few weeks there. We're pulling out all the stops in the info war. Charlotte, we're going to let you go. I want you to have a great trip. But you were getting into Reagan during the break. Of course, you knew him, just like Bob on record, worked in the campaign and things, but I knew him quite well. But going back here, you were talking about Here's the Rest of Them, a book, another woman you knew.
Maureen Heaton's book, which is called The Impossible Dream. That's at my son's website, AmericanDeception.com. Go read that book. It's had hundreds, thousands of hits from all over the world. That's the history of Reagan. And if you can get a copy of Here's the Rest of Him, do that.
He was pro-gun control.
And pro-regional government and everything. And see, the Republicans, United Republicans of California, that's Southern California, prior to him being elected president, they got that 10 years ahead, really. They knew what he'd done as governor in California, so they wrote this little book. And I was given that book, and I got mad at them because they're beating up on my hero. And I didn't read the book. And then I went into the department, and I found out exactly what he is. And then I got out of the department. He didn't respond to my letter. I got fired, you know. And then I went back and I read the book. And I thought, Charlotte, you naive little baby, you should have believed the United Republicans of California. This guy is a fraud.
All right.
That's the nicest thing I can say about Ronald Reagan. I think he was a very, very good actor.
Charlotte Iserbyt, have a great vacation. We look forward to having you back when you return. Thank you so much for spending time with Rob Dew and Aaron Dykes up there in the last 2 video interviews.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed them enormously. They're great young people, and I wish we had more young people like that who cared about this country. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Charlotte, God bless you and
Bye.
take care. All right, there she goes. Well, I got her on about the CNP because I got these emails. You had Pat Buchanan on. You're best friends with him. I've had him on like, I think 3 times, 4 times over the years. And I do like him. You know, he's anti-war, pro-gun, but I don't trust him. He worked for Nixon. Or other people I have on there like, that guy's New World Order, he's in the CNP. A lot of this is just conservatives that have been invited. Just like the CFR, you can't say every person. I've had professors send me emails. I'm a professor at biology, and I'm a member. How dare you say we're New World Order? Well, I sent an email back years ago. Well, I'm not saying you are, but I know the CFR reports they put out call for world government. I know it was set up by British intelligence at Pratt House in New York in 1922. It's the overall organizations, and it's hard to shake me up. And Bob, what shook me up is not that there's wild stuff going on in Hollywood. It's that Ronald Reagan is such an icon for so many conservatives as like this image of conservatism. And what he said, the things he was for on paper sounded really great. And I remember watching politics during the Republican and Democratic conventions in 79, 80, and my parents not telling me what political views to have. Who do you like? So I watched the Democrat, Republican, and I said, I like the Republicans. I like Ronald Reagan. when I was, 6 years old or whatever. I'm only 36, folks. And it's just that icon image. But it's not even that he was with some woman doing something freaky. I mean, that's still disconcerting, but I'm not here judging people. It's Bob Chapman, who I know is an icon conservative, who's got the true conservative pedigree going back to 50 years. I know you know all these people. I know you've been instrumental in all this stuff. I know you were friends with Reagan. That's on record. And then you come on air and say that, and so I have to take it as the truth. I wish it wasn't the truth. It's like I don't know how to compute that. I mean, that sounds so Hollywood-esque, dark film right there, just black and white footage of Ronald Reagan. It was some. I mean, why were you invited to this meeting, Bob Chapman?
Because I was connected to a couple of other people who were invited.
And what did they say? I mean, they said, this is why we're showing this? I mean, what?
No, they just said it's a very interesting film, and you should come and watch it. And I know these people quite well, so I said, well, okay, I'll go. And that's what I found out. And they said to me afterwards, well, what do you think? I said, well, I'm surprised that I'm not. And then I told him what I had learned from somebody else years before. And
do you think this was an intelligence gathering operation with people they knew and were friends with Ronald Reagan to see if they could get more intel?
No, these were people, the ones who I knew who were there, who I knew who they were all very conservative people. But there were other people there I didn't know. So
how many people were there, roughly?
About 15, 18. It was a pretty wild lifestyle in California, just like there is in New York City, and especially Southern California. Well, I guess San Francisco has theirs.
No, I've brushed up against it. I don't like it, and we got a lot of affiliates out in California. Beautiful coast, nice people. I just don't like Los Angeles and the overall. And of course, that's a oversimplification. I just kind of get the willies, and it's not that I get the willies. I mean, I'm not judging somebody, and I'm not certainly endorsing it. But I mean, what some guy and a woman are doing, whatever. It's just that films of it and stuff, the whole thing. It's just. Well, I mean, did they tell you why it had been taped? I mean, you said covertly. I mean, this is horrible.
Well, I don't know why it was taped, but I think it was for blackmail. And then it was, I think, used politically later.
Well, no kidding.
When I saw it.
Well, then why would they leak it out to these people so the message would get back to Rainbow Ronnie that everybody knew?
No, I don't think so. I just think that they felt it was time to show it, I guess. I really don't know their
Well, I can't play it on air because there's so much profanity, but Harper's Magazine 6 years ago published another report about Nixon interviews they'd done and stuff they didn't publish in the 70s. And when people said, oh, that can't be true, they released the tape. And it's, Bohemian Grove, San Francisco, and Northern California. Yeah, they all go up there with Reagan and everybody else. Let me tell you something. It's the most, and they started using profanity but talking about all the homosexual activity. And it just seems to always pop up with Republicans, and then with Democrats, it's like beating women and stuff. It's like Democrats, it's always breaking women's noses, and then Republicans, unless it's Dick Cheney, he likes what the Democrats like. It's the Walking Dead with his bionic heart with no pulse, Dick Cheney. And with Republicans, how many of them get caught in restrooms and stuff? I mean, what's going on? I mean, do you have to be like that to be a super high-level Republican?
No, I don't think so, but I do believe, after having lived for many years in Southern California, that it certainly helps one's career if they engage in those kind of things.
Oh, boy. Well,
it was very, very prevalent. I lived there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, a long, long time, into the 90s. And so I saw lots. I lived in Malibu for years. I spent a lot of time in Beverly Hills and, all over Los Angeles. But I saw lots, met lots of people. Nothing surprises me.
So you think Nancy knows about this reported stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see how she could not have known.
The reason I asked what color the film footage is, it's much easier. Back in the 70s, they'd still be using animation. It's much easier to fake a black and white.
Well, but it goes beyond the film. You know, there was other evidence I had. But, you know, it's not something I've talked about in all the years.
Well, let's get it. Bob, you're a smart cookie. You know, once you talked about this, you got to tell it all. So despite I wish I never would have asked the question, now we have to get all the pus out of the wound here. What else? What's the other evidence? Let's get it all out.
No, I don't have any other evidence.
Okay, good. Make sure every bit is squeezed out, okay? You know why.
You know, that's it. And it was my personal experience. And it happened, and that's the end of it.
Yeah. Well,
and the poor soul is dead now, and that's where we all go.
I thought you were going to say he was a communist or something. I didn't know.
No, but he was on the edge there. In fact, I knew people quite well. In fact, I remember one businessman lived right on Wilshire Boulevard, just before the Miracle Mile, and he was a client of mine. I was a stockbroker, and he said, "You know, I came from Texas, and you know, this Ronald Reagan used to make lots of speeches throughout the West. He made a number of them in Texas that I heard." He says, "Boy, if this guy isn't a communist, he's close to it." So I knew people who had actually seen his speeches who thought he was very leftist, we'll put it that way. And as I was trying to tell you, he met up, he knew George Murphy, of course, and Murphy had been head of the Screen Actors Guild. He got Ronald Reagan elected, pointed him to the right, so to speak, and then he got the GE contract, and his whole life changed. He was all washed up.
Wow.
And George Murphy resuscitated him.
Well, I don't know what else to say here today, Bob, but I will imagine...
Well, let's talk about business and finance.
Yeah, they tried to push gold and silver down this week, but give us your take on that.
Well, I think the appointment of Mr. Daley, one of the Daley crime family persons from Chicago, and he's appointed the chief of staff. It just so happens that he is the managing director of the Midwest office of a firm called J.P. Morgan Chase. And they wanted everything to be hunky-dory with him getting appointed.
And we have the Obama clip to interrupt where he says, "I don't want to appoint a bunch of Wall Street fat cats. I've never seen an administration as packed full of them."
Well, it's every administration. For years and years, as a follow-up on Dillon Reed, which is no longer in business, this Goldman Sachs, and for the last 15 or 20 years, they have been the revolving door between the administration, usually the Treasury Department, among other things, but very often in foreign affairs and other things. But J.P. Morgan Chase, and of course that was J.P. Morgan years ago, they've been in control of the Fed ever since its inception.
Yeah, they're the real big dog.
That's right. And this man, Daley, is working for them. I think they wanted the commodities and the gold and silver to go down to make things look good. And then they had an employment report that came out, and it was preceded by ADP's report that was so screwed it was unbelievable. I mean, how they could, as professionals, put that report out, I just can't imagine.
What does it mean in China to now have the IMF, World Bank, and others now buying Chinese currency? I mean, that's a big move, isn't it? I mean, they're really moving away from the dollar in high speed now.
They are. And just before that, just a few weeks ago, the announcement by China and Russia that they were going to do business together in their own currencies. But that's a natural. I mean, it was to be expected something like that might happen. With the bonds, it's relevant, but it's not as relevant as the Chinese and the Russians doing business in their own currencies. That's big time. And we're leading up here. You know, we discussed this early last year on the program, And I said, I think something could happen by the end of the year, which was just passed. It didn't happen. Everything wasn't in place. But this time, we get two events happening that are very, very important. One is the situation in Europe, the tremendous amount of money that has to be raised, especially during the first 6 months of the year, by the European nations, and particularly by those who are deeply in debt. And with that, you can add in the situation with American municipalities. This is something that I predicted 3 years ago. I told everybody to get out of municipals. This is what's going to happen. It happened. And these two events are going to come together in the second half of the year, probably the last quarter of this year. And it's going to be rock'em sock'em, because I think that the euro will be under tremendous pressure, the whole Eurozone structure. And then the Republicans have said, look, we're not going to lend or feed more money to the municipalities. They got to sort their own problems out.
Well, you were the first guy I heard like 3 years ago predict that the EU would crack up. Now that's all over their news, that the EU is going to crack up. Do you still think it's going to crack up?
Oh, absolutely. It's just a question of how long will it take, and I don't know that.
Okay, well, we'll get back on to finance, something I'm a little more comfortable with, and talking about Rainbow Ronnie here. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I'm a little bit late getting back in studio because my sister was on the PrisonPlanet.com forum and said, is this real? And I do have the actual copy of it somewhere in my archives here. It's the headline, credit card receipts ensnare callboy ring inside Reagan-Bush White House, Washington Times. And then it came out in some other newspapers, and they're trying to, because they don't have an IM to that computer for on air, they're trying to grab it right now to put it up. So that would add, some mainstream news to what Bob Chapman was saying. There it is. Yeah, there's the actual microfilm scan of it. Show folks that again so I can read the whole headline, please. Scroll back to the left side. Homosexual prostitution inquiry ensnares VIPs with Reagan Bush. Callboys took midnight tour of White House. And even though this stuff sounds shocking, remember the gay porn stars going to Bohemian Grove in the news? Remember the gay madam who was the hundreds of midnight visits into the Bush, George W. Bush White House? Bob Chapman, I mean, really, it's shocking to hear that, but then when you look at all the other evidence, it's not. So there, when the media goes crazy with this, I just showed you a mainstream news article. I can show you more pointing the same direction. So I'm glad that Marley ran into that, because I was telling her, search Ronald Reagan gay, and that came up. So there you go, Bob Chapman. There's some Washington Times backup for you.
Well, I don't know whether I should have said anything, but it's out, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And as I say, he was a nice guy. But everybody has many people have proclivities that are different than others. But it was quite an experience living for 36 years in Southern California.
Yeah. Other things on the radar, the environmentalists are going crazy all of a sudden. We got 2 new articles on this today with one of these top IPCC UN officials calling for an elite warrior leadership and prison cities and everyone basically suppressed and authoritarian control. And Watson's got a big list of these globalists saying this. I mean, they're really going out in the open. Is this because we're starting to get them on the run? I mean, they came out today, the federal government admitted fluoride's hurting kids. Or are they just throwing it all in our face, or is it a mixture?
No, I think we've got them on the run. The last thing they want to do is have things exposed. The transition to what they want, which is world government, they would like it to be as smooth as possible. They don't want riots and revolution and demonstrations, and they don't want people to know that they're in your face, which they are now because they've been pushed there, in regard to world government. They would rather it be under the radar, subliminal, if you may, And I think they'd rather have it that way. And you got to go back for years. I started to get the Council on Foreign Relations House organ, Foreign Affairs, in 1960. And yes, they talked about the things that they wanted to do, but not like they do today.
Yeah. Bob, theinternationalforecaster.com, or 800-686-2237 if folks want to call and get a free introductory copy. Bob, have a great weekend. God willing, we'll see you next Friday. Have a great weekend, my friend. I'll see everybody back live 4 to 6 p.m. Central here, God willing. God bless you all. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.